They found my foster parents in the back of a magazine, even though they really did not have a lot of money. Like, everything was grants and scholarships and bursaries. But what they did have is a why not attitude. That the context for many Black people in the UK and abroad, they don't have that context of why not. It's like, these are all of the reasons why not.
And I don't want my life to be like that. My life has to be something different. So I need to do the things that you're not willing to do. And I did. I started, travel. And people are really interested in who I am as a human being. And this colour body that I wear actually is useful to me.
The thing that you want is possible for you. And so how do you shift your behaviour?
Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life, so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this.
Welcome back to another episode of the Authentic Man podcast. I'm your host, David Chambers. I'm a men's dating, relationship, and intimacy coach, as well as a couples coach with my partner, Orsa. And this episode is I love recording this episode. As you know, I usually record these intros just after I got off. So I sit down with a woman who is an incredible human being, a really, really incredible woman who I've spoken to before on her podcast, Infinite Receiving. We talked about understanding men. And today we could talk about manifestation. We really talk about her journey and what helped her go from someone who was raised in foster care, dropping out of school at 15, to being a multi-6 and 7-figure coach, right? And then guiding other people to be multi-6-figure and 7-figure coaches. And she goes through her principles, like the guiding pillars of what it takes to expand into that sort of wealth and expand in that sort of receiving and creation. And it's not just all about money. If you're listening to this and you think it's just about money, it's not. The pillars that Suzy talks about, the wonderful Suzy Ashworth, where she talks about, really are not just about manifesting financial and material wealth. They're also about manifesting the love that you desire, the life that you want to live, the confidence that you want, the self-esteem that you desire, the self-worth that you want. It's all really tied into one another. So this is I love this episode. I love recording it, and I got so much out of it, as you'll see when you listen to me asking her questions and talking to her. And she goes into a lot of her story of her upbringing and background, which I think is really beautiful and really just really not just humbling, but it really just makes us realize that, what we come from doesn't have to dictate where we go to and where we get to in our lives and what we create. And if you're listening to this and you are a man, because I generally work with men, I've got a couple of programs coming up. I have what I called my men's dating accelerator that starts on the 22nd of this month, January. It's really guiding men through the process of really expanding their abilities when it comes to dating, overcoming fear, online mastery, as well as really tackling some of the beliefs that stop us and how we can structure our lives in a way that meeting women becomes a normal part of what we're doing. So that's really accelerating men's dating lives. That's one program I've got starting on the 22nd of January. And the second thing I have coming up is my being An Authentic Masculine Man, which is a program, my now signature program I've been running for a couple of years. And this is a 3-month program now, and that's starting in the back end of February. So if that's something you really want to expand in how you show up in your dating life, your relationships, the intimacy, your purpose as well, with more confidence, with more power, with more self-belief, self-confidence, and ability to express yourself as you want, whether that's emotional expression and your voice, because we cover a lot around that side of things, then that's a program for you. And if you're interested, the links to those are both in the show notes as well. But without further ado, I'll let you jump into the episode. So today I have a wonderful guest, a wonderful woman that I met in person. Isn't that a wonderful thing these days that you actually can meet people in person? I'm always saying this to my clients. It's a wonderful option. We have this in real life, you know, where you can touch and feel people, we can hear them, and you can even smell them, which is also very pleasant as well. we met in a tent in the summer. And when I was I wasn't actually meant to be speaking. I was meant to just be there witnessing a lovely panel of some men that I knew. And I saw our wonderful guest today, someone who I know vicariously through my partner, Orsa. You know, many of you have heard Orsa on the podcast, but I know of her through the last kind of 4 years, right? Because Orsa's a huge fan. And today I have with me the wonderful Suzy Ashworth. How are you doing today, Suzy?
I am. My day's getting better and better as it goes on. It was a slightly shaky start. I'm not so happy about the weather, but I'm accepting of that. Like, focus on the things that we can control. But this is, my day is getting better and better. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for being here. We had a wonderful conversation on Suzy's podcast not too long ago, which you can find. It's on her podcast. I think what's your podcast? Infinite Receiving?
Infinite Receiving everything. Yeah.
Everything's Infinite Receiving. And the episode is called Understanding Men. That has just come out. So you can pop over and listen to that one after this as well.
Yes.
But let's just jump into Suzy, because I know that you have a really beautiful, really interesting story. And I like to ask my guests this question, because sometimes when we meet people who have done amazing things with their life, we can almost feel like they're so far removed from where we are. So the question I always ask my guests is like, what has been your journey to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I love the opportunity to reflect on all of the steps. Quite often when I talk with my clients, I'm like, we're creating this beautiful picture, like dot to dot. And when you're in it, you can't see how all of the threads connect. It's only when you take a step back and then you can see like, wow, this is a masterpiece. But where my journey started, like pivotal part, I suppose, I was fostered at the age of 3 months old. So my biological parents came over from Nigeria. And at that time in the 70s, the private fostering world was quite prominent. And so they found my foster parents in the back of a magazine, probably like Fostering Monthly or something, random. And I was very, very, very lucky to be placed with an incredible foster family who I lived with really right throughout my childhood. And so at 19, my foster mother passed away. And that was a huge pivotal moment for me, because I think that when you lose somebody that close at that age, you become very aware of mortality in a way that most people of my age, even if you've lost a grandparent, like grandparents who you lose at an appropriate age, it's kind of like, okay, this is just what happens. But I think that when you lose somebody early and that close, it's like, whoa, this is life. And life can be very short. So what the fuck are you doing with your life? because when I lost her, I don't think that I was a typical teenager. I'm conscious that I sometimes sound like I give myself a hard time. I wasn't particularly nice. A lot of teenagers are not particularly nice. You're very self-centered, very egocentric. And for sure, that was me. And so after she'd gone, it was a real wake-up call. And I think that my journey of self-development and self-exploration really started in earnest at that point. And I traveled, I went away abroad for 4 years. And that was also quite special and remarkable. And I think sowed the seeds for obviously who I am today and what I'm doing today.
Wow. Wow. My mother was a social worker for 40 odd years and she worked in foster adoption.
Okay.
So I had this odd like understanding in many ways of the process, especially she worked in Newham predominantly. For many years, when I was young, I used to type up her notes and type up some of her cases. So I used to read them. But the foster adoption world is a difficult place for many children.
Yeah.
It's very difficult to find good foster parents who are loving and kind and really pour their hearts out into the kids that they're looking after.
Yeah, 100%. And I think to have found that, I feel eternally grateful. And I couldn't obviously see it at the time because I was a kid. But now being a mother of my own, having 3 children, and also I was a stepmother for a period of time, understanding what it takes to really deeply love somebody as your own, a child as your own, it is challenging, or it can be challenging for some. Like, it's not, I don't take it for granted. I don't take what they gave me for granted in any way, shape, or form. And I think that who they were as individuals outside of that, their work ethic, they were grafters. We did not have a lot of money at all. All of that, like I said, sowed the seeds for who I am, how I approach the world, how I think about people, how I approach work. All of that comes from them. So, I give them credit for everything that I have received through life so far.
Wow, incredible. And was that was there a white family that you were with through? Yeah. And that has I imagine that also has its own dynamic and so forth, because as we spoke about before, you grew up in Kent, and now I'm like, my mind is like searching back because I know you were a little bit older than me, and I'm like, oh, so this would have been like mid-70s Kent, young black child with a white family. That would have placed a huge strain on them just by choosing you.
Yeah, it's really interesting because I think that there's a show out at the moment by Lenny Henry, my friend was telling me yesterday, which was all about the experience of immigrants coming over to the UK at that time. And I haven't watched it yet, but I am really interested to watch it. My mum, again, because I was so young, I wasn't really interested in their experience. If they were around now, I would absolutely want to hear what they had to say. I know that there's only one time that sticks out in my mind now, and my mother was verbally attacked and called a nigger lover. And that I know that she had that experience. And no, that can't have been easy for them. I myself personally, and very fortunately, did not have a huge amount of racial abuse. Like, I can count the number of times on one hand that I experienced that in my area. So I feel quite lucky for that. But I also think that during 2020 in the pandemic and everything that happened with the Black Lives Matter movement, and like it really created also lots of question marks for me and my identity and who I am. And I think that I had that throughout my kind of later years. Like, am I Black enough? Am I, what do people think of me? Why do I feel comfortable in this type of scenario when many people don't? And even my like success, like it's so important to me to be a model of a Black, dark skin woman, and now a single mum with 3 kids, and also somebody who dropped out of school at 15. Like, my story shouldn't really be possible, but it's so important for me to be a model for other Black men and women, obviously, especially women, that it is possible. But there's always this, even though I know my background and it wasn't easy, I think that it's really easy to kind of take the headlines or the highlights and be like, oh, you're different and this is why. Some of that's projection, obviously, and also, and experience. But yes, nothing is ever straightforward, is it? Everything always feels a little complex.
Yeah. Like, and it's miraculous, because maybe I see this as like, in a way, it's like, you've been through these, fostered, you're out here in Kent, like all these things occurring, like you said, dropping out school at 15. Like you said, this isn't a story that's meant to be. This is like what we get told is impossible, even as Black people. Like, and I grew up in a very white middle class area, I grew up in just East London, Essex border. And in many ways, the people around me, not so much my family, but say some of friends or family, they were often openly saying like, as Black people, we can't do anything. We can't do these things. And I always remember hearing this as a young man and being like, no, actually, you're just fucking lazy. And I'm, people are going to hear this and not like that. But this is what I saw in those people, not necessarily that Black people are lazy, but what I saw in the people around me was like, they had so indoctrinated by the narrative that they had been taught themselves, that they weren't willing to step out of that narrative because they were like, this is how it is. And this is how the world is always going to be for us.
And I think that, that indoctrination piece, I think is really, really important. And I think that because I didn't have that context where I was brought up and the family that I was in, I think that did create a more easeful path for me, because even though they really did not have a lot of money, like everything was grants and scholarships and bursaries, but what they did have is a why not attitude. Like, oh, can I learn to play the flute? Why not? How are we going to do it? Oh, we'll get you a scholarship. Oh, can I learn to play the cello? Why not? Can I do athletics? Why not? And so for me, I feel like when I decided that I wanted to become an entrepreneur, well, why not? When I decided that I wanted to go abroad and travel for 4 years, like, why not? In fact, that wasn't the intention. The intention was to go away and be away for 6 weeks. I ran out of money after 4 weeks, so I had to get a job and then ended up being away for 4 years. But it's that attitude of why not? Why not me? Has absolutely served me. And I think that the context for many Black people in the UK and abroad, they don't have that context of why not. It's like, these are all of the reasons why not, as opposed to, well, of course I can. And whilst that is not always, it's not always true. And we know that there are systems that are working against us, and there's an and I want to be the model for the and, absolutely.
Yeah, because it's like we get these narratives, and I'm sure we'll talk more about narratives and stories as we go on, and we don't choose those kind of come at us, and we grow up in them, and it's almost like a glass box, isn't it? It's like we get taught that this is all we can do. And I kind of relate this to myself, because I remember I got very used to, and I imagine you've got very used to, I got very used to being in I've got very used to being the only black man, wherever I was, whether that was when I was at university, when I went on to into my first job in tech. It was just a very normal way for my life to be. You're the only black man, cool, normal, no problem. I got very accustomed to and even when I went traveling, my first travel, the first time I ever kind of went traveling, I booked onto a tour, and it was through Russia, Mongolia, and China. And before I went, my mum would be sending these articles of these racist attacks that were occurring in Russia, going, "Are you sure you want to go to Russia?" And I'm like, "It's fine, it's fine." And I had an uncle he's still a Man United supporter, so he would travel and see Man United games all over the place. And he was just like, "Yeah, when you're in Moscow, just be mindful in Moscow." And being told by other family members, like, this isn't what black people do. Like, you're going traveling, this is not, black people don't do these things.
Yeah.
And I become quite determined at some point in my head of like, well, and this is part of the narrative that I saw, was like, well, I see what you guys do, and I don't want my life to be like that. My life has to be something different. So I need to do the things that you're not willing to do. And I did. I started, travel, as you say, you go on these trips. And I remember being I traveled by train across Russia. So from like Moscow all the way over to Ulaanbaatar, which is the capital of Mongolia. And Russians were lovely, actually, right? We have this picture of Russians being these really evil, horrible people, but they were super inquisitive. If they could speak English, they'd be like, "Where are you from? Like, why are you in Russia?" I'd be like, "Oh, I'm from England." Right? No, but, and you get that question, like, "Where are you really from?" Which is understandable. They don't have the language to be like, "Where's your ancestral heritage?" And I'd say Jamaica, and this was really interesting for me. Russians didn't know where Jamaica was. They'd be like, "Jamaica, nah, don't know what it is. I'd be like, Jamaica, like Caribbean, Bob Marley. These are the only people in the world, and this is probably going back like 16, 17 years. They were the only people in the world I've come across that do not know who Bob Marley is on a regular basis, right? But people were lovely. Like, they wanted to talk to me. They wanted to find out about my life. They wanted intrigue in me. And it set a really beautiful story for me, was like, you can go to these places and people are really interested in who I am as a human being. And this color body that I wear actually is useful to me in these places, because people are more interested in me than the white folk I was traveling with. I became like far more interesting and special. Like, I got myself into clubs and bars by simply going to the front of the queue and being like, "Hey, I'd really like to come in. I've come from the UK." And they'd be like, "Okay, cool. Come in."
That is such an incredible imprint, that experience and that awareness. I just think that is amazing.
Yeah, and it was really, not to say there wasn't, and I imagine you've experienced this in your traveling for 4 years. There wasn't say that all instances are always beautiful, but for the most part, they're wonderful.
I think here's the thing that, again, my parents gave to me, is that people generally are good. And so when you're looking for the good in people, that is more frequently than not reflected at you. Because the way that the mind works is it will always, consciously and subconsciously, find evidence to support your beliefs. And so if you intrinsically feel like the world is bad and people are against you, you will have experiences that confirm, it's confirmation bias, that confirm your beliefs. And that's hard, because your experience is your experience, and when you have that as a foundational belief, and then you have experiences that confirm that, it compounds the belief. And so you become even more entrenched. And that is why transformation and change is so hard for many people, because we see the evidence of it. And so in order to make a change, you have to be able to know that there are other alternatives beyond the evidence that you see and have experienced. And that's challenging. It's not easy for anybody.
Because it's difficult to believe, because our experience can be so long lived. It could be a whole life, right?
Our experiences are generational. It's not just your life. It's all of the other lives that have come before you. And of course, all of the other lives that are around you. And so context, and I know that we'll talk about this probably later, particularly when it comes to manifestation and, creating your own reality, and, you create the world around you. Like, all of that can be so triggering when people do not take into consideration your context.
I'd love you to explain that a bit wider.
I think that in the personal development world, and then specifically the spiritual, and then even more specifically law of attraction, manifestation, that again has predominantly been a very whitewashed space. And I think that when people talk about, and I tend to, I wouldn't call myself a manifestation coach, but that is a word that people do understand. I think that when I talk about manifestation, it is turning one thing. Sometimes that one thing is no thing, so nothing into something. It is about transforming your ideas into your reality. Ultimately that is manifestation, without any of the magic and the magic and the mystery around it. I like to kind of make it way more simplified. And I think that often in that world, there are phrases like "you create your own reality" that are thrown around. And if you can simply think it, then you can be it. And I think that those phrases can be particularly triggering for Black and brown people, because it's like, that's fucking bullshit. If I could think it, then I could be it. Like, oh, are you creating your own reality, or is that white privilege? Like, I've seen that meme many, many a time. And the reality is that sometimes it is, of course. If you're not growing up with a context of people telling you all of the time that it is not possible for you because of the way that you look, it is not possible for you because of where you've come from, that is going to change it's going to change your starting point for what you believe is possible for you, And I have this thing called the inevitability ladder. And when it comes to turning nothing or something into something else, it starts with, you have to first of all know that it is possible. You have to know that it is possible. Then you have to go from on a broader perspective, knowing that it is possible, to it is possible for me. So that's the first hurdle that most people get stuck at. It's possible for them and her and him and this and that, but I don't think it's possible for me. So first of all, you have to decide that it is possible for me. And frequently that deciding, people think that you only have to decide once. And the truth is that, especially when you're going for something big, whether that is a relationship or money or starting a new business or writing a book and the impact that you want to create, you can't just decide that once. You have to decide it thousands and thousands of times over and over again, because of life, because of who you interact with, because your behavior on a daily basis has to shift in alignment with the decision that the thing that you want is possible for you. And so how do you shift your behavior? Well, first of all, you have to shift the way that you think. And so frequently there are stories that have to be unlearned. There's a healing that has to be done around old wounds, old experiences, old anything that tells you that it is not possible, so that you can stand consistently and firmly in it is possible for me. And the longer that you can do that for, and the less resistance you have in that space of it is possible for me, the more consistent your behavior will be in alignment with the dream. And so you move from the next step of the ladder. It is possible for me to, it is probable for me, and then probable for me to inevitable. And the difference between probable and inevitable is like a visceral feeling in your body. It's like, I talk about when I first went from multiple six figures to seven figures. And it was a very distinct moment that I decided. This was in like the summer of 2019. And everything shifted. When I spoke about becoming a seven-figure entrepreneur, it was true in every cell of my body. It wasn't a think, it wasn't a wish, it wasn't a hope. I didn't feel embarrassed about claiming it. Like, it was done. Now, it took another 18 months for that to come to fruition, but it was done in my body. And so then I was able to take the action piece was so much easier because I had decided. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I guess, was it that when you decided, because there's what I really love to hear there was that there was an 18-month space where you decided, right, and it occurred, right?
Yes.
And I know that a lot of people get lost in the manifestation world of like, well, I want a new Porsche.
Yeah.
So today I'm deciding I want a new Porsche.
Yeah.
And like the Porsche should show up in like a week. Yeah. Even if they're not doing it kind of consciously, right? There's maybe a dysfunctional part of them. Actually, let's take people away. I'm just talking about myself, right? There's a dysfunctional part of me that's like, okay, this year I'm going to make six figures this year. And then I'm like, yeah, six figures. I'm on board. I'm doing my embodiment practice. I'm breathing it. I'm moving it. I'm walking it. And then I wake up one morning. I'm feeling super tired. I didn't sleep very well. I have a really bad conversation with a client. Something else goes wrong. And then you kind of just think, oh, fuck, it's not possible.
Yeah.
You just want to like crawl back into bed and hide.
Yeah.
And I'm sure in that 18-month period, there's at least maybe some moment that occurred to you that this, one of those many thousands of times.
Yeah.
What do we do when that happens?
It's about how quickly you can move out of the wobble back into the certainty. And so a really good example of this is that, one of my key focuses is just like being a good mum, and having great relationships with my kids. And I've been very open in saying that like my kids can often be like they're my biggest teachers and also like my biggest triggers. And it's like, I know that I'm a good mum, and I know that over the last 3 years, especially, I've become an even better mum. And at times, I just lose my shit. People are like, Suze, you're so zen, you're so calm, you're so in tune. I'm like, yeah, and always and. And like this weekend, I had my daughter's birthday party and it was great. And there were a lot of kids, like there were like 13 kids ice skating and then 9 kids at my house, like sleepover, like everyone's tired, nobody's had any sleep. And last night, like I really just lost my shit. My daughter was just tired. So she was being like a normal 11-year-old, ungrateful. And this was bad and that was bad and this was bad. And I was just like, stop talking. And then afterwards, I'm like, that is not the vibe, Suze. Like, that is not the vibe. And I think that what happens when you lose your center, you're triggered for whatever reason, many people then feel guilty about being triggered. And that feeling of I'm not good enough, and because I've acted in this way or because this has gone wrong, you start to compound the negative emotions, and it takes that much longer to shift. Whereas if you can have your trigger and then sometimes it's necessary to feel whatever is coming up within you. You'll know this from your like embodiment work. Like sometimes it's important just to feel the feeling and then change the state. it's like, okay, I'm getting back on the horse. What does the version of me who has already created what it is that I desire to create do at this point? And for me, it was to look at my daughter and be like, I didn't actually say sorry. I didn't actually say sorry yesterday, but I did. I just opened my arms and I gave her a big hug. And that was, that felt appropriate. And it was like, okay, this is the reset. And I get to be the mother that I desire to be now. And in choosing that action at that point, I am setting the seeds in motion for the relationship that I am manifesting with her throughout, obviously, her childhood and then her as an adult. I'm acting in alignment with the vision. How quickly can I go back to that?
So it's like, it's in line with what you were saying about it not just being a single decision. It's like a decision we're making every single moment there. It's like, and when we do fall off, which is we're human beings, we're going to fall off of our intention, is to allow ourselves to like feel what's there, which is, you know, I feel like shit. I feel like I'm useless, and feel it and move it and be with it and allow it to be there as a feeling instead of suppressing. Is to like allow it to even like completely embody that for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever sort of time that is.
Yeah.
And then as the question you said there was like, come back to is like, what does it look like to be the person I'm manifesting myself as?
Who am I becoming?
For you, it's like being a great...
Yeah. Who am I becoming? And how does she, in my case, act now? And making a decision from that place rather than from our fear or our doubt or our past, which is what so many people are doing when they're in the wobble. They're making decisions from outdated versions of themselves and then wondering, why is it not happening? Why is it not happening? Why is it not happening? It's because of that.
And I guess when we're in that state of that fear, that emotion, is it that our beliefs, you know, we talked about story narratives and a little bit of negative beliefs. Is it that our negative beliefs about ourselves that we hold, that we've been holding for many of our lives? I'm not good enough. I'm unlovable. I don't belong, whatever it may be.
Yeah.
Is it almost like in those moments when we're in that fear, those beliefs have like almost like they got a stronger hook into us to kind of like drag us back deeper into them?
Yeah, 100%. And I think that this is where the kind of energy talk comes in, because often consciously we're saying all of the right things. And for some people, we might even be doing on the surface what appear to be all of the right things. But if the underlying feeling and experience is that I am not good enough, I don't deserve it, it doesn't even matter how many positive affirmations that you say. It doesn't matter how much action you take. What you're a match for is the belief that I am not worthy of this right now. You know? So when you take your 6 figures, the first thing I would say is that what I see of you is that goal is too small for a starting point, you know. And I always encourage people to allow themselves to extend the timeline, you know, go bigger than 365 days. Ask yourself in 5 years, what is it that I desire to be receiving? What is the impact that I desire to make? So you're going to be 45 in 5 years' time. What is the type of money you want to be receiving as an exchange for the impact that you make in this world? Where do you want to be then? 45, how much money do you want to make a year? Yeah, I'm like, this is a real question.
Yeah, I know. I love how our podcasts become coaching sessions.
He did this to me, yeah.
Yeah, $1 million. That's what I want to be. 5 years.
$1 million. Okay. So for me, how you collapse receiving six figures in whatever period of time, a year, a month, a day, is to start acting like the man who is becoming David Chambers, who is receiving seven figures a year. And that's going to change the decisions that you make today when you allow yourself. You don't have to do it this year, but it's really getting in a like, what is your financial goal? Oh, I'm going to be making $1 million. Oh, $1 million, like getting used to saying it and then asking yourself, oh, what's the support that I have? This is one of the pillars of infinite receiving, by the way. What's the support that I have that is going to allow me to set the seeds, set the plates in motion so I am going to be able to easily scale my business so I'm making $1 million a year? Who do I need to be? This is another pillar of infinite greatness. Like, who do I need to be? Where am I holding back? Where am I not completely owning myself? Where am I diluting my message? Where am I diluting my voice because I'm a little bit afraid, or I feel like I can't say this? It's like the voice of the man that's making $1 million. Where am I not tapping into that yet? What are the stories, the experiences, the beliefs that are stopping me from doing that? You get to work with those so you can transmute those to create a clearer channel for you to own your unique blueprint. And then for me, it's the heart work. How can I approach this? How can I go all in? I talk about love, and I talk about it sometimes in a fluffy way, like how can we be more open-hearted? But really what I'm talking about is, are you willing to be vulnerable enough to allow your heart to be smashed into 1,000 pieces? Most people are operating in their love, in their business, in their life from this place of protection. I'm not going to give you all of myself because what if you reject me? And you can apply that across the board in whatever circumstance. That is what it is. I'm going to hold a little bit back because I'm afraid that you are going to reject me. And so doing the work to remove those barriers to the heart so that you can go all in and share from that heart-led place, that is so potent and powerful, in business, in love, everywhere. And the final piece of that puzzle is then the acting in alignment. So this is the final pillar in the book, the pillar of infinite co-creation. It's like, okay, I'm going to intentionally work with manifestation, intentionally make those deliberate and conscious choices consistently over time, as I continue to be aware of my blind spots, continually releasing stories, releasing beliefs, releasing behaviors. So I am able to continue to take action, which will eventually, over time, 5 years, 3 years, 10 years, create the magic that it is that I desire. And I think that the thing that I really want to say is that I love talking about this from a material perspective, like what is it that we want to create materially? But the reality is that if you work with those three pillars, knowing your greatness, allowing yourself to be supported, and really coming from that place of love, what you inevitably do is start to understand that the million makes no difference to your innate and intrinsic value. You start to manifest from this place of knowing that you are worthy and deserving, irrespective of your bank account, knowing that you are worthy and deserving, irrespective of any external validation. You validate yourself in the most healthy way. And the way that I talk about it is coming from a place of fullness. And then all of the external manifestation that you desire is like, it's the cherry on top of the cake. It's overflow. It's abundance. It's not making you. If it's taken away, it will not break you, and we can start to really enjoy this process of creation step by step by step as we move through life. That for me puts the whole manifestation conversation, it's just different. It's why I talk about transformation really over manifestation.
Because it's like what I'm hearing here from you is this is an inside job. This is 100%. A transformation of our inner world, our inner stories, and looking for those, because often when we start the kind of self-development work, we're looking at the big stories, these like, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable, I'm not capable, all these kind of stories. And as we, do the work and we transmute and we grow and we expand, we start to see with those big stories, their power starts to wane. But then there's these little strands that are there. These, like, one of my spiritual mentors, she puts it in a really beautiful way. She's like, it's not the big rocks you have to carry and move anymore. It's the grains of sand that are inside your shoe that are now like the things that are stopping you.
100. Yeah.
And the work becomes then of like, almost like I think back to a tantra retreat I went to, and they called it like being a hunter for those little bits of sand, those little strands that like hold us back, like that stop us from saying the thing we really want to say, or opening our heart to someone really the way we want to, or going after the thing that we really want, or settling for the second or third best thing because we're like, oh, if I go after that big thing, I might fail. And if I fail, other people will think X, Y, and Z of me, and they won't think I'm good enough. And that will inevitably confirm the fear that I have about myself, for instance.
Yeah, 100%. That's the work. And, I say this all the time. I'm an ongoing student of the work. I know all of this to be categorically true. And there are still many moments every single day where I know that there is a deeper level of alignment that I can access if I can let this go, if I can let that go, if I allow myself to ask the question, be seen, be witnessed in my vulnerability, if I forget that actually you're motherfucking Suzy Ashworth, you have something important to say, I forget that all the time. I'm like, who am I? Oh, I'm not as good as that person, going into comparison. It's like, what? Hello, McFly, so. Yeah.
And for you, was there a moment that you saw there was a story that you had been telling yourself, or a negative belief that had its grip on you? Is there like a particular moment and story that you really saw in your life and was like, wow, that's really been blocking me from moving to the next level, or the higher levels that you're wanting to get to?
I think early on in my entrepreneurial career, in fact, even before I became an entrepreneur, it's when I decided that I was going to leave my 9-to-5, and I felt at the time the most aligned thing for me to do would be to go and study. And up until I decided that I was going to retrain, so move from sales and become a hypnotherapist and a psychotherapist and a hypnobirthing practitioner. So I did this hypnotherapy and psychotherapy diploma. And it was a big deal for me to choose to do the diploma. And I chose that specific one because it was very practical. And I'd just been running the script for 15 years that I wasn't academic and that I wasn't smart. And so the idea of going back into a classroom was really, really intimidating for me. And again, everything starts with a decision. So I had to decide that I was going to be able to not only start this course, but I was going to be able to finish it. That was the goal. And something remarkable happened. Aside from the fact that I enjoyed it greatly, I didn't just finish it, but I finished top of the class. And outside of the comparison things, what that gave me was it broke a myth for me. That's what we often have to do. We have to find the lie and disprove the lie. I think that's a slower way to go around things, but frequently, that is just what we have to do, because it's just not as simple as being like, okay, I'm going to be a different human being today. We have to disprove the lie. And so that did. And I think that in the same way as evidence can work against us, the more we challenge old paradigms and the more evidence that we are able to collate for ourselves, I can do hard things. The more synchronicities that we can notice. How come it's weird? I was thinking about that person, now that person's just called, or I was thinking about this, and now it's like right there in front of me. The more of those that you can collect, i.e., like even just write down, the more evidence for magic you are collecting. That's very, very helpful then when you decide to go for something big, because you can do hard things. You know that there's lots of evidence of magic. You know that you are attuned to synchronicity because you're noticing it and you're recognizing it more and more. And that confirmation, we can use confirmation bias in our favor when we're being conscious like that. So that was a really big deal. It was like, you are not stupid and you can learn things. So that was super helpful. And then just another thing is that in my work in media sales, you'd have the sales team, you'd have the creative team. And as a salesperson, you were literally not allowed to have a creative idea. If you'd be like, I've got an idea, they'd be like, no, don't want to hear it. That's for the creative team. And I'd forgotten that as a child, I was very creative. One of the subjects that I did do well in was performing arts. I loved to sing. I loved to perform. I loved to be on stage. I'd forgotten that. And I loved to write. And there was this one moment I was writing a post just for like my Facebook page. And it was like, just, I don't know why, but this awareness of you are a really creative individual. You were told that you couldn't be. You forgot that you were, but actually you are. And again, very permission giving. The next campaign that I created for my company was me dressed up as like 4 different characters from the musicals that I used to watch when I was a kid. And it was something like I'd never seen on the internet, especially within the coaching space anyway. And it was that, permission to think creatively. And then all of a sudden, the ideas kind of felt like they had been unleashed. And so, sometimes, again, like you said, sometimes it's the big stories. And of course, I've had There's Only Ever Just Enough. That was a huge story in my money world. Like, you don't have to be rich to be happy. And there's always just enough was a huge one. So even when I was earning hundreds of thousands of pounds, I'd still get to the end of the month and only just have enough. But there was no overflow. There was no abundance because of that story. So you've got the big ones like that, but also those little ones, creative, I'm not smart, how can we disprove them? And sometimes it's just awareness. Oh, shit, sometime. And that awareness will come from a coach, a mentor, somebody who just sometimes directly can see something in you and will ask you a question. And other times it's just a general question. But because you're in the conversation of it, it will trigger a whole, cascade of awareness. And that awareness is the first step to creating change, transformation, and manifestation.
Beautiful. It's amazing how we get these. Well, it's not amazing. We know this. There's so much science to back up how we get these stories and narratives from childhood, from school, and then we carry them all through our lives as adults, even though our lives are completely different. For you were talking about there being creative, and I'm struck by other people, but also myself, is that how often you know, I've had people, and I'm sure you've probably experienced it, people like, oh my God, I could never do what you do.
Yeah.
You know, you writing stuff online. Like,
Yeah.
if I'm sure my listeners should know by now, I'm dyslexic, and I was diagnosed as being dyslexic at the age of 8 years old. So I would refuse to write anything in front of anybody, right? Until I was, and I always remember this day, I was about 25 or 26. I was at a company called Landmark Education, and I was assisting on their forum.
Okay, I've done the
I was
Landmark
assisting
forum.
on the forum. Done the forum, the advanced course, and SEOP,
Okay.
and I'm there, and I'm assisting, and the assisting team lead says, David, I want you to write these various details on this board, and I'm like, no, I can't do that. Like, I can't do that. And she's like, no, you can. I was like, no. My talents are elsewhere.
Yeah. And she's like, you're a Landmark forum. You're doing it.
Yeah. She was like, this is a breakthrough for you. I was like, no, this is gonna make. She was like, you're gonna be really coachable here. And I was like, oh my God, I hate this woman. And I had to write out like lines and lines on this whiteboard about details about lunch and stuff like that. And I don't know if I've ever sweated so much in my life when I was writing this, because I wrote it and then I kind of half finished, and I got about halfway through, and she was like, I need you to do it again, because you can do it better. And I was like, this is the moment that comes through. The story for me is like, see, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I can't do it. I told her I couldn't do it. And I was like, really went into this whole hissy fit. And she just kind of stood there in front of me, was like, I know you can do this. So you can do it again. And we've got enough time. And I did it again. And then I did it, and I put it in front of her, and I was like, oh my God, she's going to say it's not good enough. Like, I feel like I'm back at school. I feel like I'm 5 years old and I'm writing for my dad or something again. And she was like, this is perfect. This is beautiful. And what was really interesting for me, and I see this in the men and women that I work with, is I didn't want to believe her.
Yes.
She was telling me this is great. And I was like, no, actually, like, I've made a mistake here. I was pointing it out to her. I was like, look, I made a mistake there. Like, I did this thing, like that letter doesn't look quite right. And she stopped me. She was like, David, I'm telling you, this is wonderful. We just need to put it in the right place it needs to be. And then that's it. And I think, I don't know if that was the first time, but I always remember that as a moment. I was like, I've been given this awareness of something I've done is great, and I've moved past this belief to some degree, right? But my belief is so strong, I don't want to accept the awareness that's in front of me and what's being said to me in this moment. I'm trying to reject it. I'm trying to push it away.
Yeah. And the reason that we do that is because familiarity is comfortable, and we want to remain in our comfort zones because it's safe there. You know, if it's true that you can write, if it's true that it is legible, it is readable, it is understandable, it's good, then you're going to have to start to do things differently. You're going to have to start to do new things, because you no longer have the excuse that that is not my wheelhouse. And it's like, oh, the subconscious goes, no. Let's just stay with the old story. And depending on your context, depending on who you have around you, you will have, and this is why forums, this is why things like the Landmark Forum are so powerful, because you're surrounded by people who are like, I am not going to accept you arguing for your limitations. You know, this is why having coaches and mentors and, you know, for you guys, men's circles, putting yourself in environments where people are like, I see your power. No. I am not interested in your story. I hear your story. I respect you for moving beyond that story, but you do understand that if we carry on talking about your story, you're not moving beyond it. Like, there has to be something else. I'm here for your something else. We're now going to let that go. You know, we are choosing to act from who we are becoming, not from where we have been, even though there are some very valuable lessons in where I have been. You know, And that's why I think for most people who have created anything in their lives, like, yes, it is you, but it also takes a village.
Yeah. And it takes people, as you said there, people around you who will not just believe in your greatness, in your expanded existence, that will hold you to that as well.
Yes.
You know, I had a flashback of, I've seen a video somewhere of you coaching, and I can't remember exactly where I've seen it, right? I've definitely seen some snippet, and you were very lovingly direct to somebody. And it reminded me, and then I watched Tony Robbins' I'm Not Your Guru. And for some reason, as you were speaking there's two moments kind of leaped into my mind. I was like, oh yeah, because there's moments in that coaching that I saw of you, and I can't remember when it was. It would have been a few years ago. It would have been I feel like it was during the pandemic or something, where you were very straight and very direct, to the point where I remember listening to it and being like, oof, 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 oof. Suzy's not fucking about right here. But
yeah.
And I also remember watching I'm Not Your Guru with Tony Robbins, but it's like, it's holding people to that standard of who they can be. Yeah. And why that's so uncomfortable for us is because we're so not used to people doing that. It can feel like someone is literally attacking us, like someone is being an absolute fucking arsehole to us, right? Maybe in front of a room of people, maybe just on a one-to-one conversation with our coach or mentor. But in fact, that is the very thing that helps us grow and expand.
And I think as a coach, and I've thought about this so much because we now have a coaching certification. Being a coach who is willing to take a stand for your client over and above needing to be liked by them in the moment is challenging. Many coaches will avoid saying the thing that really needs to be said because they're afraid of hurting someone's feelings. They're afraid of them being rejected. They're afraid of somebody saying that, you know, they're not good enough. And this is where, again, knowing your unique greatness, knowing that what you have to say is valuable, knowing what you have to say is important, is, you know, it's the foundation of, I think, all powerful change, whether it's for yourself or if you're supporting somebody else. It's a big deal choosing your voice again and again and again and again and again.
And again, it's a kind of moment by moment decision to keep choosing.
Yeah.
Just thinking about receiving, you know, your infinite receiving, which I love, like infinite is there. There's a wonderful program on Netflix. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's about the number infinite. The whole thing is about that. I can't remember what it's called. Me and also watched it one day, and it's I'm not into maths. Well, not particularly into maths, but it's actually a fascinating watch. And receiving, we have this issue with receiving. Like many people want to give. They want to give. They want to give people stuff. You know, they want to give people money, their time, but receiving feels so uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like why is that for people, that receiving is such a difficult paradigm to sit in?
I think that it is rooted in our beliefs that we are not worthy and deserving enough. And if I give enough, which often manifests in overgiving, that will make me good enough. And so it's rooted in lack of self-worth, which is sad. But one of the things that I learned and now teach is just really understanding, like, in the same way as the sea, it has to ebb and flow. The universe has to expand and contract. Like, when we are in full alignment, then giving and receiving is a cycle. And if you are only ever giving, eventually you run out of like from a bank, if you're only ever paying out, you eventually run out of deposits. So when you allow yourself to receive, what you're actually doing is, in my eyes, creating more abundance. Like that flow gets to continue. And I think that what I've seen with many of my female clients is that give. It ends up translating into the martyr the martyr archetype, the victim archetype. It breeds resentment. So allowing yourself to open up to physically receiving, allowing yourself to be physically supported, all of that is an indication of how much more you're knowing on a day-to-day basis that you're worthy and deserving of that.
So it's like it's the more we allow ourselves to receive, it subcommunicates to us that we deserve to receive.
Yeah, 100%. So again, I talk about that from a material perspective, but kind of the wider concept of infinite receiving is that we're receiving all of the time. We're receiving information, we're receiving signs, we're receiving lessons. And what I want the book to do is help people go from this unconscious place of input to consciously choosing so much more of what is available to them when they bring their attention to what is it that I desire to create. And ultimately, I suppose it's raising people's belief in themselves, their knowing of that they are worthy and deserving, their sense of fullness and appreciation of who they are. And then let's start consciously choosing what it is that we want to receive.
Got it. And if we come from what can we do if we are like from a lineage of or a community, because that's like another level of, it's not just shifting my beliefs about receiving, right?
Yeah.
I have a second layer of like the people around me don't believe I'm deserving of receiving. Like maybe you're in a relationship with someone who, maybe you have friends who are like, everyone's trying to pull, not necessarily consciously and deliberately trying to pull you back, because this is something that we see. It's like, what can we do then? Because there's one thing to say, start shifting our own belief around receiving, go, okay, I'm open to receiving, I want to receive. And then the people around us are pulling us back into our belief because it's our old belief, because it's their current belief.
Yeah. So, like one of the exercises that I take people through in the book is called the Infinite Wheel of Receiving. And you just kind of look at your life and then you look at all of the key areas, relationships, health, finances, and you rate yourself. So it might be, if it's the numbers out of 10, it might be, I'm a 4 for relationships. And you'll do your self-inquiry, like, why would you give yourself a 4? Well, it might be because I'm surrounded by negative people. It might be because I'm arguing with my partner all of the time, or whatever it is. And then the question then gets to be, what is the vision that you have for your relationships? And so then in your mind, you're going to start to create, well, this is how. And for me, the vision is not necessarily what we see, it's how we feel. So I am in a relationship where I feel seen and I feel heard, and communication is the foundation of everything that we, like, great communication is at the foundation of everything that we do. Start to build up this vision for what you have, your 10 out of 10 relationship. Then it is on you to start to become the person who is an energetic match for that. So it starts with, when that person says something negative about, your dreams, your vision, whatever, who are you being in that moment? Are you the person who reacts and says, fuck you, and you don't know anything, and you need to read this book, and you should be more like this, and you should be more like that, and you should be, Or are you the person who says, okay, I hear what you're saying, and based on everything that's happened before, I get why you're saying it. But right now, this is my focus, and I love you very much. And what I need from you is to either support it or just let me be with it right now whilst I work on what I'm working on. I think what's really interesting in relationships for me is that many of my clients say to me, yeah, but my husband doesn't get it, or my partner doesn't get it, and they're holding me back. And I'm like, listen, everyone's fucking amazing in meditation. Do you know what I mean? Like, I am a guru when I'm sat there not interacting with my kids or anybody else. But like, it's in real life that this stuff actually matters. And what is true is that it only takes one small change to change all the things. And so your job is to focus on your behavior that is in alignment for the vision of yourself, that is a match for what it is that you want. And one of two things will happen. The people around you will first of all be like, I don't really get this at all. She's weird, not interested, whatever, but see the changes and eventually be like, you know, that weird forum thing that you did, like, what was the name of it again? You know, and will rise and join you. They will see you and your behavior, your consistent behavior over time as a model and be inspired by you and want to join you on that journey. And that can take time. And the people who feel scared, intimidated, afraid by your changes because it highlights all of the places, you've got to remember that when you're changing, it highlights all of the places other people are not changing. And many people are going to be scared and intimidated by that. And you can either be compassionate and understanding, or you can be judgmental and, you know, attacking because it brings out the defense in you. But if you can be the model for what it is that you want to create, and I imagine everybody wants to be an empathetic person, everybody wants to be a kind person, everybody wants to be a loving person, and you can accept their fear, but ultimately they will fall away. You know, those relationships will become less important, or they will not be present in your life. And that, for some people, especially when it comes to caregivers or siblings or partners, where you're used to being in this toxic dynamic and you're used to towing the line, you're used to not being yourself, the idea that those relationships might fall away can often be the thing that will stop people making the decision in the first place. And herein lies the theme of today, is that you have to choose what is the most important thing. Is it the vision, or is it staying in the box I've always been in? You know, is it living my life from a place of really honoring my fullness and who I am? Or is it about honoring you and who you want me to be? These are, like, I think often when you can have conversations like this, it's like, oh, yeah, pillar of love. Yeah, got it. Yeah, need to get more support. Yeah, got it. Oh, yeah, need to honor my greatness. Yep, got it. Right, great, wonderful. It's like, this is work. The pillars are simple. Manifestation is simple. Transformation is simple, but it's not always easy. You know, and that's why when you are in a place where people don't really honor the changes that you are wanting to make, again, environment, support, mentorship, coaching, circles, whatever it is, can be such a lifeline and a remembrance that you're not just in your head. It's not just a pipe dream. This is possible. And having people around to booster you, I think, is really important.
Yeah. And it's what I kind of heard inside what you're saying is it's like we might consciously choose and say out loud, like, oh, I'm choosing my greatness. But the proof in the pudding is really also in our actions. Like, because we can say one thing and we're unconsciously choosing something else. Like, I'm consciously saying that, okay, I'm choosing to, you know, be a match for £1 million a year, but my actions are still in line with fearing that my business, I'm going to go out of business.
Yeah, totally different mindset, totally different energy, totally different behavior, totally different choices. Absolutely. And so coming back to what is it that I'm creating? Who am I becoming on a daily basis? So important. We've all heard the 1% a day. Like, I really subscribe to that. Where can you plug yourself in? You know, I like to create environments where people can plug in on a daily basis, get a daily hit of inspiration, daily reminder of what is possible. What am I creating? Oh yeah, fuck yeah. Okay, yeah, we're on it. You know, oh, I've just fell off. Okay, dive in, like just a little bit. Okay, right, yeah, back on it. Yeah.
Because it's so easy to say something. It's so easy to, I see this from a relationship standpoint of view. Yeah. It's so easy to be like, oh my God, I am such a match for a beautiful, conscious, wonderful partner. And then when you have a coach, you have a mentor, and you start diving into the little actions and the things they're saying and the way they're reacting, even in those tiny moments, those tiny little ways in which you react and respond to people. And then you start to see like, oh fuck, no, I've been missing the boat here a bit, because actually I've been in my fear. I've been in my negative belief about myself. I haven't been conscious of this unconscious actions that's been coming through my body and my being in these moments. I've been unconscious.
Yeah, 100%. And so I would say that the even wider intention of the book is to raise consciousness. You know, how can I become more aware of who I am being in my choices on a moment-to-moment basis, so I can consciously create the life, the business, the relationship that I desire. All still a work in progress, all good.
Because it's easy to look up at people that you mentioned earlier, comparison. Of being like, oh my God, I'm not as amazing as that person. I'm not as amazing as Suzy. Like, I should just give up. But, listeners, and remind you here is like, Suzy's not saying that she's got it all cracked and then she's done and she's all complete. She's sitting here saying that she still has plenty.
I'm in the
still
work,
doing
baby.
the work.
Yeah.
Okay, so this feels I'm like scanning my brain. I'm like, is there another question I have? But this feels like a really actually one question I have actually.
Yeah.
Is like, because you've worked with thousands of people, right? You've worked with thousands of people. And what's the most common mistake you see people make in manifesting their dreams?
I think that it's the thinking that they're doing the things. I'm doing all of the things, so why isn't it working for me? It's not being aware of your blind spots. And as I say that, I'm like, I know, but that's why it's a blind spot. But the truth of the matter is that you are always a match for what it is. You want to know what you're a match for? Look around you. That is not a lie. And when you are a match for the upgrade, it will start to present itself. But before you're a match for the upgrade, you will feel that in your body, and then little by little it will start to present itself. And I think that when it's not there, just be willing to go deeper. Stop saying I've done all of the things and I know it all and this not working. Like don't be a baby about it. It's like, be willing to go deeper. And when I say go deeper, I really just mean be bloody honest with yourself. Like, why does it not feel good for you to be making $1 million this year or $500,000 this year? Okay, when I'm really honest with myself, I'm so fucking terrified that I'm going to be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I can barely keep things going right now with my workload. Like, that feels scary. Okay. You know, I really, really, really want a relationship, but I am so afraid of my heart being broken. So even though I'm swiping left or swiping right for half an hour every day and like picking 10 matches and doing all of the things that I'm supposed to do and going out on dates, I am petrified that my heart is going to be broken. And so maybe I'm going on dates or maybe I'm not going on dates, because nobody ever wants to date me. But get really real with yourself. You're a match for your current circumstances. And if you're not seeing any shifts, it's because you are fully a match for your current circumstances. And people don't like to acknowledge that. Get one manifestation course, another manifestation course, another book, and this book, and that, and this, and that, and this. Like, be very honest.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. It's the simple truth. It's really the simple truth. Yeah. You're not doing all the things.
You're not doing all the things.
Suzy, as these times...
I was just saying, you're not doing all of the things. And sometimes it's not even all about the doing. It's about the thinking. It's about the beliefs. It's about the stories. Just you get to be, it doesn't need to be a list of 5,000 things in order to manifest this. But those stories, your worthiness, your deservingness, the fear of actually getting what it is that you want, all of those things matter.
Yeah. The big and the small, the big and the small. It's always such a pleasure, Suzy, to be coached by you. Like it's what I love is the simplicity with which you explain the hard truth, the simple truth.
Thank you.
And how like it just lands as like, oh yeah, as you said there, it's like there's somewhere where we're operating in our being and our actions and our thinking that just isn't in alignment. And the job, how I've translated this into my head is like, our job is then to find where that is.
Yeah.
To see where that is, bring awareness to the light. And I just love how so simply you explain things and so wonderfully, powerfully you explain things. So it's such a, I feel such a honor to have you on the podcast and to obviously speak to you on your podcast as well. And I am imagining that the guests are like, where can I get Suzy's book? Where can I join Suzy's program?
Everywhere. When will this be coming out, David? Is it soon or?
Yeah, next week.
Soon? Okay, amazing. So if you listen to this before the 15th of February, listen to this immediately. We've got a really juicy pre-order bonus on. So you can get the books anywhere they sell books. Just send my team a proof of purchase, a receipt saying that I have purchased a book on audio, Kindle, or a physical version. And you get a month free in my brand new members club called The Gateway. So I will be doing Q&As in there every month. There'll be embodiment sessions in there every month. There will be trainings on transformation and manifestation. And actually in the first month, we are going to be diving deep into my flagship course, Infinite Receiving. So it's basically a month's worth of free coaching. All you have to do is pre-order the book, send in the receipt, and you can come and play with me in the Gateway and in my Infinite Receiving course. Yay.
Yeah, I'm just taking down some notes there. I'm going to go and pick up that book right now.
Yay!
And I will drop in the show notes. I will drop in the link for you listeners to pick that up. Yeah, I cannot recommend Suzy's work highly enough, and I'm not just recommending it for myself. I also witnessed Orsa move through Suzy's work for well over a year, and it was really transformational for her on so many levels.
Thank you.
I can not just as a partner watching his partner. Benefited me in so many ways. I'm saying it really selfishly, but also benefited her in so many ways. So if you are listening, go and run out and get Suzy's book. But also, if you're listening, I know that I always love to hear from people what they got from the episode. So if you've taken something from the episode that's really like landed with you and really shifted how you feel about yourself and manifesting your dreams and what you think you're capable of, please feel free to drop us a message, myself or Suzy. I will put Suzy's Instagram handle in the show notes as well, because it's always lovely to hear from real people. Because you know, as much as you think, you know, Suzy's out here coaching thousands of people, you'd be surprised the number of times that people don't just go, "Oh my God, I'm so grateful that you said those words in that podcast. This helped my life in that way." Because actually, you know, we out here, we do this work not just for the money. We do this because we really want to make a difference in people's lives, because ultimately that is what makes the world a better place, when people feel more capable, more confident, more believing in and of themselves.
100%.
So I will say a big thank you to Suzy for today. It was a pleasure to sit down with you. I'm so honoured. And listeners, thank you as well for being here, for checking in this episode. And ciao until our next episode. I want to say a big thank you for listening. You know, it's people like yourself that really help get the podcast out into the world. You know, especially if you're often sharing the episodes and the podcast with people that you feel just could do with listening, right? Can see a different way of being a man, maybe a different way of having dating lives and intimacy and relationships. So I want to say a big thank you. And if maybe after listening to this episode, you think, oh, there's someone actually who could really do with this, please share it with them. You know, share the love. I'm really, really grateful. And if, you know, you want to get in contact with me for any questions, or you want to talk about coaching or any working together, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram @theauthenticman_, or you can email me hello@theauthenticman.net. Thank you very much.